All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Learn from the Masters. In today's episode, I am going to be reacting to another video from Film Riot. And this video is basically about how to shoot a scene using one camera. In fact, just basically on scene coverage. If you want to shoot a scene, what are the various angles that you are supposed to capture so that you can kind of get a complete sense or to make kind of like the scene very nice. But just before we get into this video, I want to say a very big thank you to Reed from the Reed channel for giving me this particular shirt. This is the first time I'm using it on this channel. As you can see, a very amazing shirt. It has After Effects logos right here on this shirt. Thank you so much, Reed. You guys can check out Reed's channel. His channel is much more dedicated to pure visual effects, and you can check out his channel. Please make sure to show him some love. Let him know that you are coming from the Africa Amaze channel. With that said, let's get right into this particular video from Film Riot.
I'm sure you've heard it said before. You write your film 3 times. First when you write the script, then when you shoot the film, and the final rewrite is in the edit. But you can't get to that edit without proper coverage of your scene in production. That second phase of writing your film. Now, last week we talked about shot types, covering sizes, angles, movement, and so on. We talked about how if a scene is a sentence, then shots are words. And coverage is the words that you use to form the sentence. And the editing, of course, is the arrangement of those words into that sentence. So today we're talking about how I think about the collection and a bit about the arrangement, from how it's shot to its final edit. Now, I do want to say up front that we are looking at films from incredible filmmakers. I don't have any access to them. We don't know what ended up on the cutting room floor, what was found on the day or in the edit. We can only analyze the final result. So our approach here is completely from my subjective analysis and is really how I study scenes from the films I love myself. But with all that out of the way, let's jump right into it. So coverage is the collection of shots that you get in production to create the montage in the end. And the understanding of the montage is essential to crafting the intended experience when planning your shots. And I'm saying montage purposefully, not to sound like I should be wearing a scarf, but to reference Alfred Hitchcock.
Montage means the assembly of pieces of film, which, moved in rapid succession before the eye, create an idea. Of course, the most elementary form is the juxtaposition of imagery in various sizes, and how it can be changed to create a different idea. Now we have a close-up. Let me show what he sees. Let's assume he saw a woman holding a baby in her arms. Now we cut back to his reaction to what he sees, and he smiles. Now what is he as a character? He's a kindly man. He's sympathetic. Now, let's take the middle piece of film away, the woman with the child, but leave his 2 pieces of film as they were. Now we'll put in a piece of film of a girl in a bikini. He looks, girl in a bikini, he smiles. What is he now? The dirty old man. He's no longer the benign gentleman who loves babies. That's the difference. That's what film can do for you.
I mean, this is kind of like genius in all. Now, what is this experiment all about? As you can hear him explaining, basically what he means is that when you pick a piece of film, let's say you show somebody looking straight into the camera in this particular example that he showed, the person's reaction was that he looks at the subject and kind of like for a little while before he smiles. Now, when you put the other footage of a woman with, let's say, a child, then it looks like the man is compassionate because he looks at them, then he smiles. Now, in the next experiment, take away the woman with the baby and put, let's say, a girl in a bikini and show that same man again looking to that direction and smiling. And still using that same footage, you realize that this time around, the man is no more the compassionate man who is looking at this woman with the child or baby and smiling. But this is kind of like a man kind of having an idea of maybe chasing or kind of like a very amorous kind of like lifestyle. And that is a power that, or let me say, that is a power of film that he's trying to highlight here. The same footage, but depending on the arrangement, when put before something else or a different emotion, it means totally differently. And this is a very big lesson for us as filmmakers, that the way we choose to represent shots or even the way we choose to arrange them can actually alter the meaning one way or the other.
Now that is talking specifically about the theory of assembly, but I bring that up here right up front because understanding that is step one in planning your coverage. But now let's take a step back from post-production into pre-production and talk about 5 different coverage types. And this is different from shot types that we discussed last week, since most of these could be just about any shot type. Though having said that, our first one here is often a wider shot, and that is the establishing shot. While this isn't always used in a scene, it's a great way to set the stage for your audience to know exactly where they are, like showing the outside of the location before moving inside, giving a general sense of the surroundings. Then we have the master shot. For me, the master of the master shot is Steven Spielberg. Many of his scenes have played heavily inside of his moving masters. The master is most often wider, a lot of the time stationary, but like Spielberg often does, it can also move around the scene, covering everything through intricate blocking. Regardless, the main function of the master is to cover all the main action inside of a scene. Then we have the reverse angle. This is what it sounds like. It's the reverse of a corresponding angle, most often seen in dialogue scenes. When we're looking at one character, say in a medium close-up, and then we flip around to a matching shot of the opposing character, also in a medium close-up, that would be a reverse angle. And another that has become more and more popular over the years is the oneer. The oneer is when a scene is covered in one long, uninterrupted shot, either done legitimately in one or done as a perceived oneer where there are hidden cut points. The idea of this coverage option is to not have any. This perspective is your only angle. You are locked into this. So it's a good thing to know about, but not one we're talking about here, since the oneer is more about the lack of traditional coverage and is more about blocking, which is another topic we'll dive into on another episode. Finally, let's talk about a rule, one that we hear about all the time, the 180-degree rule. The 180-degree rule is talking about an invisible line that is created in your scene. Once that line is created, you stay to one side of it. For instance, in this scene here, we have our master shot. This is setting our line down the middle of these two characters. So with the line of action being here between them and our camera being on this side, this area becomes our 180. If we were to take our camera over here, that would be crossing the line. And the main goal here of following the axis of action that you set is keeping your audience oriented in the world. You create this spatial relationship between the people and things in your scene so that as things begin to move, your audience is able to follow seamlessly with the action. The simplest explanation is in a dialogue scene like this. If you use the axis of action correctly, one character will be looking right to left and the other left to right, so it will feel as though they are looking at each other. If you break this rule and jump the line, both characters will be looking in the same screen direction and appear to no longer be looking at each other. This breaks the orientation because it isn't a natural way to perceive a moment. In reality, if you were in the room, you would see these characters from this perspective. It wouldn't be possible for you to shift instantly from one side of the room to the other. Of course, you can shift the line within a scene. It's done all the time with great effect. Like this scene in Michael Mann's The Insider, Mann shifts the line here in the scene by dollying to the other side, taking us to a new axis of action as the event in the scenes shift our character. So this isn't breaking the line, it's creating a new one. But with all that in mind, you can break it intentionally to disorient your audience, or break it while reorienting them in other ways, like through cues of action or sound to create a feeling of chaos. Like all rules in art, it can absolutely be broken if it's intentional. Just have a handle on why it's a rule to begin with, then go nuts. But now with the stage set, I'm going to jump into some scenes from great films to take a look at their coverage. But before we do, let's take a second to thank mixkit.co.
Yes, guys. So as you can see, this is a very, very important topic that we must endeavor to look at as filmmakers. Whether you are a beginner, whether you are intermediate, this is always like a very good reminder. Topics like this are really very good. And so that is the main purpose of this particular series that we are embarking on throughout the whole of this month. Is just to share some of these videos with you guys, watch them together with you so that we can get to learn from their experiences. Film Riot is actually been around for more than 10 years now. In fact, I really always lack words to describe these guys. The kind of filmmaking work they put out for free is simply out of this world, guys. Great stuff to Film Riot, guys. I mean, sorry for that. Like, I genuinely always lack words because what this guy has done for the filmmaking community across the past 10 years has been, I mean, so mind-blowing. People like him, Andrew Kramer from videocopilot.net, have done so much for filmmakers, or let's say independent filmmakers across the world who basically have learned this craft through the internet. I mean, let's get back into the video.
Let's look at a scene with minimal coverage, and one that demonstrates the moving master style we talked about before. It's one of my favorite examples of that too. This scene toward the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Brody comes to give Indy the good news that they're going on their adventure. The entire scene is made up of 3 shots. Our establishing shot showing Brody pulling up, this moving master that takes us through the entire scene, then this one insert of the gun, which is a close-up foreshadowing the danger to come, then we cut back to our moving master. But although there are only 3 shots with the moving master doing all the work, that moving master handles the work of a lot of coverage.
So guys, this is something really very, very important for me. You realize that Ryan did mention about the fact that the gun, the close-up of the gun really has a relevance in the scene. Now, for most of us beginner filmmakers, sometimes we show close-up of objects or we place emphasis, because remember that we are doing visual storytelling. If you do, or let's say if you shoot a close-up of a subject or an object, it means you are giving some level of prominence or relevance to it. So don't just shoot random shots. Make sure they kind of are working in tandem to actually convey the intended emotion that you want to put out to your audience. So if you're showing the close-up of the gun, make sure that it's foreshadowing or the gun is actually really relevant. Either the gun is about to become a tool for some form of investigation, or someone will pick up that gun to kill someone or something. Just make sure that whatever that you are shooting as a close-up really has some form of major relevance to the scene. And I just felt like this is something very important that we have to get really straight.
Over that turns into a medium, a long shot, and a close of Indy's suitcase when the gun lands on his whip. Spielberg does this a ton, and it's really elegant filmmaking that I personally very much respond to. It pulls you into the scene and allows you to live and breathe the moment with the characters. It's a very engaging style for me. But let's jump to something a little more traditional that demonstrates basic triangle coverage of a dialogue scene. This is a 2-minute and 2-second scene from another Spielberg film, Bridge of Spies. Here we have 2 characters sitting across from each other, and they stay seated the entire time. And we have 4 shots total here. Our master in a medium-wide 2-shot. This is of course establishing our line, so the camera will stay on this side when we move into our overs. A medium on this character and 1 reverse medium on our hero. And 1 medium close that brings us into the scene. And that's it. These 4 shots carry the scene because it's all that's needed. There's nothing relevant to cut away to. It's all about how Hanks's character handles himself in this situation. That's why in the end of our scene, Spielberg moves us toward him as he takes control of this moment. And I called this triangle coverage before, and the reason for that is if we look at a top-down view, our shots are here, here, and here, which make up for a triangle pattern. So if you ever hear that term, that's why. But let's move to another scene with a little more going on. This one's from Blade Runner 2049. We have another simple dialogue scene here, but this time, even though it's 12 seconds shorter than our last scene, it's covered with 7 more shots for a total of 11 shots in this scene. First, we start with an establishing shot of this area of the city. Then another wide establishing the lieutenant's office, which also sets the line for our scene. Then a medium close, still from outside. The rain on the glass is distorting our view of her as we hear her distorted world view. Then we cut inside to a single, but we're on the side of her, on the outside, as she gives a forceful command to Kay, unsure of how he will respond. And the same goes for Kay's single that follows, but in this shot, he complies. So when we cut back the next bit of coverage on the lieutenant, we're inside. They're connected now. We're now looking into her eyes in this medium shot. And the same goes for Kay's reverse angle that follows. He's compliant now. Then we get this wide over as the lieutenant makes it clear that she wants Kay to kill someone who had been born, not just a replicant, which takes us to our first medium close-up. We can see his eyes more now, the humanity coming through as he contemplates what she just said. And we cut back to our medium of the lieutenant. She feels challenged and steps into her own medium close. It's becoming confrontational now. Once again, Kay complies and we move back from our MCUs into a wide 2-shot, which was likely their master shot as well. well. Then we cut back to our medium, which has become a medium wide as Kay moves to the door, then one more medium close of the lieutenant as she delivers an emotional blow at Kay, and now back to what was our medium close and is now a medium for the last defeated moment from Kay. Now, although we have 7 more shots in the scene compared to Bridge of Spies, this is essentially triangle coverage with the exception of a few shots. So if you are watching this and a bit newer, dissecting scenes like this can really shine a light on how you can take basic ideas like triangle coverage that ensure you have a scene you can cut, but then lets you inflate it out to a more intentional and engaging scene like this, giving Villeneuve plenty of options in post to construct the emotion of the piece. We have some wides, medium wides, a few medium close-ups, and these could have been placed in any order, but the order Villeneuve chose, at least for me, silently comments on their relationship and their emotional state in any given moment. For instance, if he didn't give himself all of those options and shot the whole scene medium to medium close, which we can look at by scaling up these shots, it doesn't have the emotional impact when we get to the moment Kay is processing her command to kill someone who has been born. In the actual edit, they stay more wide until that moment, allowing the first medium close to visually punctuate that emotion. And of course, I'm adding my own subjective experience of this scene to the final result. I don't know if what I have translated was the actual intention behind the cuts and coverage Denis Villeneuve chose. We also don't know what ended up on the cutting room floor. What was
right. I think what Ryan has said here for me is always very important as filmmakers. Most of the times we analyze people's works and we fail to give disclaimers like this because at the end of the day, an artwork is subject to interpretation. That is Ryan's own interpretation of the whole action that has happened here. That does not mean that that's right, or that does not mean that that's exactly what the filmmakers intended. It's actually open up for interpretation. And I'm very happy that Ryan did set the record straight that this is his own interpretation. The director might have a different interpretation, but this is what he was able to understand. Because of the power dynamics and the way the scene was shot. And that is something that we really need to take very keen note of.
What was found on the day or in the edit, and so on. Again, we can only analyze this finished product, which I'm sure they toiled on and tried multiple versions of in post. For me, it comes down to knowing the whys of your scene. What each moment means, why it happens, why they are saying what they are saying, and how you want the audience to feel about that. Those are the things that will guide you in deciding your coverage for any given moment, and ultimately how you will connect those puzzle pieces together. And I know we only looked at some simple scenes with some pretty simple coverage, but looking at something more complicated like action would make for an hour-long episode, and we do have an episode about shooting action that you can find in the notes below. The main idea here is to strip these concepts down to the simplest versions so that we can take a look and digest those ideas cleanly. Then, like I said before, you can build on top of those with more understanding and, as I keep driving home, intention. So do this for yourself. Grab scenes from films that you love and break them apart like this. Look at the shots individually. Create top downs that dial it in further for you. It's a way to reverse engineer and wrap your head around those concepts that made these moments great. But that's it for today. If you aren't subscribed, consider doing that and hitting the bell to be notified the next time we upload. I do want to go more into scene breakdowns and an episode on blocking too, so we're definitely going to swing.
So yeah, that is it for this particular episode, guys. Basically, I just hope you guys have learned a thing or two from this particular video. I have a practical video that I actually recorded some time ago. It is actually one of my most viewed videos on this channel where I put some of these things practically to use on a set. Sometimes I know that it's very difficult that when you watch tutorials like this, how to now kind of translate them onto, let's say, the actual field, it becomes a little bit problematic. So I've taken the time to shoot a whole kind of like hands-on video on set where I actually demonstrate how to put most of these skills to use. So click here to watch that particular video. And if you did get a ton of information out on this video, I do much appreciate it if you do click on the like button, because that goes a long way in helping other people discover this channel right here on YouTube. And if you are just seeing us for the very first time, over here we do talk about cinematography, photography, editing, and all its related branches. And we also do watch movies and talk about other film industries across the whole world. If all this sounds interesting, then I do much appreciate it if you do click on the subscribe button, and please make sure to click on the post notification bell so you are notified anytime I drop awesome content right here in the Africa Amaze studio from the African continent. Until next time, as always, guys, keep practicing filmmaking. Peace out.